Good morning, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Let's get this over with. So today I'm gonna talk about 5 classic books that made me fall in love with the literature, classic literature. 5 books that were my gateway books into classic literature. I mean, of course, this video is for someone who is looking to start reading classic literature but don't know where to start or haven't developed their taste yet. So I'll talk about few different kind of books, but 5 actually good classic literature recommendation, because lots of classic literature are just, they make it into movies and there are so many versions of it and they get translated into like 100 languages, but you don't like it. Sometimes it's just not your vibe. So I'm just gonna talk about my vibes, and this would be for beginners version, so you don't have to have a literature degree to appreciate these books. I'm very much into dark academia and cottagecore vibe. I mean, that's how I'm dressed as today, cottagecore makeup and outfits, but I don't know what your vibe is. So after watching this, I hope you'll be able to pick one book for yourself, at least from out of this 5, and you'll get an idea what kind of book that you would like to start with. The first book that I'm gonna recommend is exciting because it's a philosophical classic, Albert Camus, The Stranger. I used to read Albert Camus, but then I realized it's Camus. It's called The Stranger or The Outsider. This book has 2 titles, but please know that it's the same book. They republished it, they changed the name. I think one was published in 82 and this was published in 2021. And I'm not sure if it depends on the translation or just the year of the publication. This book, it's about the alienation of an individual. He refuses to conform to social norms. He thinks differently. Let me read this first line for you guys. I mean, everyone who will recommend this book, they will talk about how gripping the first line it is, because listen. Mother died today, or maybe yesterday. I can't be sure. First opening line of this book is mother died, and he refuses to acknowledge his feelings. Kind of this first paragraph sets up the novel in like a perfect way. You can like expect this guy to just, you feel like, why is he not getting it enough about this huge event that has happened in his life? His mother died. It's very small too, it's very fast paced. You can read it in like a day. It does make you think about how other people might not see the world the way you do, because the main character isn't a bad person by any means, but as it plays out in this book, you can see how people around him find it hard to like him or even consider his justification for doing something terrible, which in this case is murder. In short, easy language, easy read. I don't want to give away so much. It's written by Nobel Prize winner, so you might as well, read it. Plus, usually I don't respect so many authors whose work I generally like some of them are raging assholes in their life, like marry their underage cousin, things like that. I'm talking about Edgar Allen, but you can't respect those kind of people, and sometimes even if you like their work, you feel like I don't want to recommend it. But this guy he kind of lived particularly normal life. With this author, the more I learned about his personal life, the more I felt like reading more of his work. I mean, I don't absolutely hate him like I hate most of the classic literature authors. After I read anything by Camus, I feel more mature, more intelligent, more philosophical, more spiritual, more cynical. I think this book would be amazing to cross up both bridges, classic literature and philosophy at the same time. Just read one and we're like, it's raw, it's real, it's honest, and I think it's super book. My reviews. Super book. That's my review. Let's move on to the second book. Next recommendation I have is more of an author than a book itself, and that is none other than Edgar Allan Poe. He is a father of modern detective stories. Not so much father of the short stories though, just a very influential figure in literature itself. I'm in love with his mind. He's a genius. His writing is eerie and it's creepy and it's spooky and it's sometimes it's gruesome, it's raw, but like it's not terrifying, it's not the stuff of nightmares. I recommend this book to anyone that asks me for like a recommendation, whether it be classic gothic literature or gothic horror detective stories or mysteries, anything. If you get a collection of Edgar Allan Poe, you have to make sure that it's not his poem, because his poems suck. Everyone I have ever recommended Poe has thanked me with their life, and so I will recommend Poe to everyone until the day I die. Did that rhyme? It's very easy to find his work in collection like this, like the one that I got. If you get paperback like this, then it's cheaper. Like this one was hardly like 250 rupees. They have hard copies on Amazon, it's like 300 rupees, just slightly more, but like I don't know why I'm talking about that, but yeah, it's easily available. It has collection of his short stories and his poetries, which poetry sucks. Don't get the version that has just so much poetry, because his poetry is just, it's comical. I'll link this one below. So you can power through the short stories and letters and essays, and you'll have the sense of accomplishment and achievement as you're powering through a book. It's always easy to read a short story and poetries as compared to an actual novel, because you have to pay so much attention, and as you're finishing short stories you kind of get the sense of, oh, I'm reading again. You can tuck all of these books under your arms at the same time. Like I read Edgar Allan Poe, yes, I've read his work, yes, I've read Edgar Allan Poe, yes. I even read his letters too. I love him. You know, the pretentious guy that you see at the parties. You can be that guy. My favorite short story of Edgar Allan Poe is called Telltale Heart, and it is essentially the story of an unnamed narrator who is trying to convince you, the reader, of his sanity while he is describing you, a reader, of the crimes he committed. This man is genius. That story is like eerie. You know, you don't have to love the characters he writes about. That's not the point of this author. This author is just, he's gonna creep you up. The next one is very commonly on the list of classics for beginners. Wherever you search on Google, this book will be there for classics for beginners, because every time you read an article or watch a YouTube recommendation for classic for beginners, and you will see this book. Picture of Dorian Gray is the first book I've seen that rightfully so owns its place on that list of classic for beginners. This book definitely, it's for beginners. Really good, really accessible language, and a good story, good plot. Excuse my copy, it's a collection of Oscar Wilde instead of a separate book of Picture of Dorian Gray, the one novel that I'm recommending. It's a collection of this author, and it has a bunch of other stuff in it. Look how pretty it is. It's just, I just bought this despite me not caring about the other works of this book. They have included like a play in it. I don't care about it, but I only got this one because it looks really cool. I mean, look on the side, the gold, just very aesthetically pleasing, and sometimes I lose my sense of practicality when I see something pretty. If you just get the Picture of Dorian Gray paperback book, then it's hardly like 150 rupees. I got hard copy for it because I'm stupid. Okay, Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is also a genius, for your information. Oscar Wilde is also a genius. It is about seemingly good-natured young man who discovers the power behind his exceptional beauty. This book really explores the relationship between beauty and morality. Oscar plays a lot with the presumption that gorgeous people are good people by heart as well, like inherently morally good, and that ugly people are therefore bad. I mean, you don't have to agree with him, but that's the concept of this story. Fascinating book. It's considerably short. It's like 200 pages, written in a very nice, easy to understand language for beginners. It was written like 100 years ago. I was shocked when I first read it. I was like, how can I read it so easily? I'm powering through it so fast. It's really easy language. Also, one of the benefits of buying a slightly expensive publication like this is that they provide this extra information on the bottom. They mention all the references. They're referencing anything from different centuries, or they're talking about some artist. They will mention that in the bottom. They do the research. Some references you won't get it unless you Google it. With book like this, that's one of the benefits. For example, this book has many references from French and Roman artists and musicians. references, but I never had to Google any names. Very easy to read, language is so accessible. I was surprised that it actually is a classic when I started out, because I wish I had known about this kind of book to start with when I was first starting, because when I was starting I read Crime and Punishment as my first classic literature book. Can you imagine? If I had read this one as my first book, I wouldn't have felt so overwhelmed by how many words you have to Google. So I want to read some of my favorite quotes from this book. Really, how I annotated my book is blue ticks would be for sad parts that I don't want to go back to. Green parts are the quotes that I like but not necessarily agree with. Pink ones are the happy moments. I'm gonna read some of the quotes from this book that I like. Beauty. Real beauty ends where an intellectual expression began. There is always something ridiculous about the emotions of people whom one has ceased to love. Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul. To have ruined oneself over poetry is an honor. The reason we all like to think so well of others is that we are all afraid of ourselves. It often happens that the real tragedies of life occurs in such an inartistic manner that they hurt us by their crude violence, their absolute incoherence, and their absurd want of meaning, their entirely lack of style. We live in an age that reads too much to be wise and that thinks too much to be beautiful. The basic of every scandal is an immoral certainty. Russian literature is my favorite. It's my absolute favorite due to its darkness, really, but much of it's not for the beginner, except for the death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. Any other famous work of Tolstoy is absolutely not to be considered for the beginners, but this is such a small book. I couldn't find it on Amazon India, so I downloaded an illegal ebook. So it's like hardly 150 page, and don't tell anyone, but I will link it down below the ebook if you want. And plus, all the classic books you can always find audiobooks on YouTube. Just saying, you can always find those. You don't even have to buy it from Audible or whatever. Now let's talk about this book. This book is another great fast-paced read. This is one of the most profound book I have ever read because of its nature. As the title suggests, the book is about death. A man learns he's dying, and this entire novel is about him coming to deal with that and face the reality of that and work out what that means for him and the world around him. It is perhaps one of the great tales of redemption and forgiveness I have ever read. I can't give much away, but this last 10 pages of this book, this novella, is just, you have to just read it. It leaves you feeling sad and scared and pensive, and it's just an all-around great book to read due to its writing style and fast-paced nature, the context, the substance, and also the fact that it's from Tolstoy, who is an incredible writer, by the way. But much of his literature is really long. But after reading this book, you can, brag like, yeah, I read Tolstoy. I promise you, I'm not making this video to teach you how to be fake. The purpose of this video was not to how to be pretentious, but you can be if you want. The next one, this novel also pops up a lot in the classics of beginners list, and this one is actually warranted. I mean, George Orwell's 1984. A lot happened in this book. A lot of this historically, there are so many replicas, or so many sci-fi books and movies have taken concept from this. Just, if you read it, you'll get it. If you like Black Mirror, the show, read this book. If you like anything dystopia, sci-fi dystopia, read this book. Let me just give you a basic idea of the story. Residents of this super state called Oceania are under this constant government surveillance, omnipresent, dooming government surveillance called Big Brother. There's a war, manipulation. It's a dystopian novel. It's terrifying, but it's not frightening in the way of it being gothic horror or like psychological horror or thriller. This brings fear in you, but it's not like you want to scream. It's discussed a lot, it's studied a lot. Like anytime there is a topic like government surveillance or people have no privacy, this book that comes to mind. Imagine a world where every move you make, every word you say is recorded and can be used to punish you. You basically have no control. A lot of people say that we're currently living in that life and book is relevant. I don't think it's that extreme right now. I mean, there are memes about it, but what I would say is, despite your belief or fear in government, read this book. It is a really good dystopian story. There are several movies adaptation of this book too. If you're going to read any recommendation from this book list, read this one. It's going to be worth. Nahi to paisa wapis. I mean, you can come back and unlike this video if you don't like this book, but it's a book that anyone can read at any age or what gender you are. Not any age, I mean 12 plus, I guess. I mean, whatever gender you are, you'll enjoy it. Whether you enjoy sci-fi or fantasy, this book will be interesting to you, because throughout this book you'll feel like you're watching an immoral, unethical experiment going on, like a Truman Show. Yeah, that's a good example. And you're rooting for this main character in this, but you're also like constantly scared for him, but you also feel like, what a dumbass. When I read first line of this book, it's kind of sets you on for what's going on. It was a bright cold day in April. You see, the author is very smart. I mean, cold day and then bright is a contradiction, and plus in April, again cold in April, so really good formation of the sentence there. And the clocks were striking 13. This book is written for future. They're making us assume that there would be another hour. Instead of it ending at 12, there would be 13. I can't read the last line for you guys because then it will give away what happened, but read it. Okay, that's it. Please hit like button and subscribe. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.